I'm Kusha Karvandi, and you're listening to Exerscribe Radio, the source for biohacking your health to reach your full potential. I created Exerscribe to provide people with a roadmap to working out. With our new workout app, you can get a custom workout program that adapts your workouts to your body type, goals, sleep quality, stress levels, and personal preferences. With live chat support, our workout app has become so comprehensive some call it a personal trainer in your pocket. Our users are seeing over 90% success rates with their goals because we take the neural approach to fitness, meaning we integrate movements and exercises that recalibrate your brain and body to prime you for rapid strength gains and fat loss. Check out the Exerscribe workout app in the iTunes App Store today. In today's podcast, I interview author of The Diet Cure and Mood Cure, Julia Ross. Julia is a pioneer in the field of nutritional therapy and a specialist in the treatment of mood problems, eating disorders, and addictions. After 10 years of working as a counselor and psychotherapist in a variety of settings, Ross became a program director and founded 7 successful integrative treatment programs in the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of her early achievements include starting Northern California's first programs for drug-addicted adolescents and their families, and receiving a state award for her work with addiction and diabetes in California's Native American tribal clinics. In 1980, Ross began hiring nutritionists to research the link between biochemistry, emotion, and addiction. By 1986, this exploration had led to the creation of an exciting new model of treatment that combined innovative nutritional therapy and holistic medical care with conventional counseling and education. In 1988, Ross founded the Nutritional Therapy Institute Clinic in Mill Valley, California, an outpatient program that further developed this model with special focus on mood problems, eventually including effective alternatives to antidepressant drugs. Ross is a popular, compelling speaker who has made hundreds of presentations to introduce the public to the extraordinary benefits of nutritional therapy. In addition to a busy lecture schedule in California and throughout the U.S. and Canada, Julia provides advanced training and certification for health professionals. She has been an instructor at John F. Kennedy University's Graduate Psychology Program in Orinda, California, and at the University of California, Berkeley Extension's Addiction Counseling Certificate Program. She is currently an adjunct professor at Drexel University. The Mood Cure, released in paperback in 2004, was a finalist for the Books for a Better Life Award and continues to sell at extraordinary rates. Now in its second edition, Ross's best-selling book, The Diet Cure, has sold over 150,000 copies. The many publications that have featured Ross's work include Vogue, Counselor Magazine, and the Journal of the American Psychological Association. Ross has frequently appeared as an expert on radio and television. In 2006, an NBC special on the Mood Cure's approach to depression was aired several times throughout the U.S. Julia holds a master's in clinical psychology as well as a California marriage and family therapy license. She is the executive director of the Nutritional Therapy Institute Clinic in Mill Valley, California. Hey everyone, we're here on Exerscribe Radio with the author of the books The Diet Cure and The Mood Cure, Julia Ross. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you.
So, just to get started, could you tell the audience a little bit about you and your background?
Well, it's a long story, but I will try and tighten it up. I came into the field of mood health as a psychotherapist. And one of the questions that you asked me was, what was one of the most challenging things that ever happened to you? And I think the most challenging thing that ever happened to me in this long odyssey is that I had to give up my attachment to psychotherapy because I found that it didn't work with the population that I was trying to help. People with addictions and people with eating disorders, people with certain kinds of mood disorders. They just didn't change with psychotherapy. And I had to give that up and look for something new. And what I found was nutritional therapy. And the benefits of it have been so extraordinary since I learned about it in 1986 that I've never regretted that decision to give up psychotherapy. But it was still hard. And so once I did give it up and began to develop nutritional therapy programs, I almost immediately started seeing tremendous success where I had had total failure before. So I started my own programs where that was our primary focus, and I've been doing that ever since. Up until very recently, we've been seeing a wide variety of problems in our clinics, but now I am on a mission, and my mission is to spread the word that we have a solution for the primary cause of our weight problems and our health problems, or really our epidemics of overeating, overweight, and illness in this country and abroad. And so we've started a virtual clinic here for overeaters to coach them in these techniques that I talk about in both books, The Mood Cure and The Diet Cure, for how to quickly change our brain chemistry with nutrient supplements, brain-targeted nutrient supplements, so that we can leave behind what I call false emotions, the negative moods that really don't make any sense, that we can't shake, and the false appetites that have us eating a diet that's almost 100% commercial, toxic food. So that gets us right up to date. We just started the virtual clinic 3 months ago.
Nice. That's great.
Thank you.
So with your clinic, does it entail any kind of physiological component, or is it all nutritional coaching?
Well, nutrition is physiological. You know, we're addressing, for example, if you mean, do we get people exercising?
Mm-hmm.
No. And I'll tell you why. Because at least 50% of the people who come to see us are too disabled by their diets to have the energy, the strength, the muscle mass to exercise. So initially we were, very, very, very rough on them, if they weren't exercising. And now we just wait, because we can see that once they stop craving the toxic foods, they stop eating them, they start substituting adequate protein, high quality carbohydrates and fats in their diets, their energy just comes up and they want to exercise. It's a natural instinct in mankind to want to be physically active. And it's only when we are disabled really by our diets or some other crisis in life that we don't get around to exercising.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Are you familiar with behavioral optometry?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I was just curious if you guys do similar concepts, because I actually came across this recently, where people are doing vision drills to change behavior and change psychology and so forth. So I just,
we haven't needed to explore a whole lot further than we have, because we can go right into the brain with these
mm-hmm.
nutrients, and in 5 minutes, for example, in the virtual clinic, we're doing Skype interviews with people. We send them the samples of the nutrients, identify which ones they're going to need, and have them try them right, on Skype, and watch the difference. We can see the change, they can see the change. And that is about as powerful and fast as you can get.
That's great.
So then, once that takes hold, they've had a few weeks on the nutrients and their diet has been revolutionized because they no longer crave ice cream and soda and chips and so forth. Then they can start exploring, is there anything else that you'd like to do now that you have energy, now that you have hope, now that your brain is working properly? And people go off, in the directions that, their destiny takes them, their interests.
That's great. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride and her book, Gut and Psychology Syndrome.
Yes, I am.
How do her philosophies compare to yours?
Well, she doesn't seem to have any sense of direct access into the brain. So she's revolutionizing the gut by changing the diet, whereas we start with the brain so that people can have the will and the ability to eat whatever style of diet is right for them. And sometimes we recommend the GAPS diet, the diet that she recommends. But we find that a lot of people can't stick with it because they have so many cravings for refined carbohydrates. And, intellectually they want to stick with it. It makes a lot of sense to them, but they can't. And that's where we come in. Anybody who has the discipline to do a GAPS diet is fine. It's only people who really want to change their diets, change their health, but can't, who need the diet cure and the mood cure.
What about Weston A. Price? Are you familiar with some of their philosophies as well?
Oh, yes, we're great allies. Because although we use nutritional supplements therapeutically as jump starts initially for people, that isn't going to be the end of their efforts. They, as soon as the cravings disappear, and that's typically within a couple of days, they're going to be on a diet that is traditional. And that's because until the 1970s, when we were eating a relatively traditional diet, the kind of balance between protein, fat, including the important saturated fats, and carbohydrates, we didn't have weight problems. We had minuscule diabetes rates right up through the 60s. And I was there and watched this transformation starting in the 1970s, which is when our diet radically changed. So it's terribly important to me that people identify as closely as they can what their traditional diet is, if they can find out. Many of us have so many genetic strains that we don't even know what our traditional diets were, but other people are pretty clear. And I can give you an example. We were working with a young woman from Guatemala who'd come up here for college, and she was wondering why she gained all this weight when she'd never had a weight problem in Guatemala, and that every time she came home in the winter, she lost the weight. And so I asked her what she was eating when she went home and how it was different from what she was eating here. And essentially, she was having sugar once a day instead of 10 times a day. She was having whole foods 3 times a day instead of maybe once a day. And I asked her, do you think you could prepare a Guatemalan diet here? And she said, yes, I never even thought of it. We think, in Guatemala that the American diet is, it's glamour. It's the ultimate way to live. And it never occurred to us that it would destroy us.
In your book, you talked about, it seems like back in the day, doctors actually prescribed amino acids, and then, something changed. Why did things shift, do you think?
Well, it's pretty clear cut. Doctors, psychiatrists were very, very interested in the amino acids because they understood how the brain worked and that the amino acids were the fuel that allowed the brain to work. But the most popular of the amino acids was banned in 1989 because one of the laboratories that produced it in Japan made a bad batch and knowingly sent it here. And it killed 11 people and made it, over 1,000 people very ill, some of whom did not recover. So understandably, people were frightened and backed away from all the amino acids, even though the other amino acids that are so valuable have never had a problem. And in fact, that company that made the bad batch never made any more tryptophan. But the FDA was very protective of the pharmaceutical industry, and Prozac had just come out and it wasn't making any money because the psychiatrists were using tryptophan, which is the natural way to build up serotonin rather than the serotonin reuptake inhibitor approach. So I think it's pretty obvious what happened, and they didn't lift the ban until 2005. Wow. In spite of the fact that there was no evidence for any problems with it. So now it's back. But in 1997, we got 5-HTP, which is a form of tryptophan, 5-hydroxytryptophan, available in all the health food stores. So people have had access to it now for quite a long time in one form or another. But the medical profession is still leery.
Wow. So they can't even push it anymore regardless, even though it's not banned anymore.
They can, but they don't. They've also been told that the natural approaches are so weak and ineffectual that, there's no point in even attempting to use them. Just go right for the drugs, which are going to obviously do a better job. But unfortunately, there's no way that a drug can build up a neurotransmitter. It just is impossible to make a neurotransmitter out of anything but food.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, what do you think about adaptogens and Ayurvedic herbs?
Well, adaptogens are really targeted towards not the brain, but the adrenal glands,
Mm-hmm.
our stress hormone regulation system. And sometimes they work very well, and sometimes they work very poorly, because they're a mix of herbs, some of which stimulate the adrenal glands, some of them which sedate the adrenal glands, and depending on what the person's needs are, it may be the right mix, it may be the wrong mix. But it's terribly important in the kind of circumstances we're living in with very, very high stress that we do something. And so we always start with testing. We do salivary testing, easy to get, cheap, incredibly effective in terms of guiding our understanding of what's going on in the adrenal glands. And then we will use targeted herbs rather than a mix of adaptogens.
Nice. So in your opinion, what is the leading cause of obesity then?
The leading cause of obesity, I'm writing a third book now to address this in the same spirit as we're doing our virtual clinic. Mm-hmm. And it's very clear that the cause of our obesity epidemic began in the 1970s with three things. We began to use high fructose corn syrup, and fructose is much more damaging and addictive and obesity promoting, diabetes promoting than any other form of sugar we've ever used in the past. So these high fructose substances are lethal, really. So that's one thing that's happened in the 70s. We also became afraid of our traditional fats and stopped eating the healthy saturated fats and went towards very unhealthy, highly processed vegetable oils, saffrola and soy oil and corn oil and so forth, highly damaged oils. And because protein contains fat, and because vegetarianism was in vogue starting in the 70s, we backed away from protein. So basically, we cut out the good fats, we cut out the protein. All we had left was carbs. And those carbs were poison at that time, were poisoned by high fructose corn syrup. So we began eating more and more and more of them, and carbohydrate consumption is definitely the key to weight gain. Excessive carbohydrate consumption, especially of high fructose products.
What do you think about juicing and detoxes?
Juices are very high fructose. They're very high carbohydrate. They're loaded with lovely vitamins and minerals, but no fiber. For people who are already overloaded on carbohydrates, I'm leery of it. I don't like to use it as a big factor in people's diets initially. I want them to stabilize on the solid foods. And as for cleanses, I'm terrified of cleanses. We've got people who've done up to 100 or more diets. They've already fasted. They've done it all. And you can only take so much fasting without damage, whatever your motivation. And so I really don't like the idea of low-calorie anything, because it's done almost as much damage as high fructose.
What do you think about intermittent fasting?
I don't know. We haven't seen enough of it, but I am basically, for someone like me who's on the cutting edge, who's creating the cutting edge, I'm very conservative about diet. I think one of our big problems was in the 70s, we became totally experimental. And diet is not something you can experiment with. We have to look at what worked before for hundreds of thousands of years and do that. Not think that we can suddenly create a brand new way of eating. So far, none of it's worked. Raw hasn't worked. Vegan isn't working. Vegetarian doesn't work for very many people. So these novel, untraditional eating styles, I applaud people's creativity, but not when it comes to the fundamentals of our survival, which are the kinds and amounts of food that we put in the body. We've got to be guided by the foods that we were consuming in a time when we were well.
That makes sense. But what about, naturopathic doctors that, have their patients do a series of labs and blood panels looking at, gut biome or gut dysbiosis, looking at their metabolic panel? Do you think that's important for people to try to establish kind of a quantitative standpoint of what kind of diet they should start with based on their genetics?
Again, it's theoretical. It has no track record. We don't know whether the testing is really going to guide us towards an appropriate diet or not. But we don't need to guess. We don't need to do testing. We know what we were eating. We need to go back to that and keep it as simple as possible. I think it's interesting, but I'm very leery of modern attempts at nutritional innovation. We don't need innovation. What we need is a retreat.
So what do you think needs to happen, just across the board to make effective change? Do you think it needs to start in the education system?
No, it needs to start in the brain. We have the power to change our own minds about what we eat. It takes 10 minutes. Read the Diet Cure, read the Mood Cure. They're very, very clear on what people can do for themselves. And if you read the reader reviews, you see people saying, "Oh my God, it was true. I really am not suicidal today. Mm-hmm. I don't even want ice cream anymore." This is the real miracle of our time, is that we can reach into our own brains simply, cheaply, and change some of the most fundamentally damaged of our behaviors, our eating and our moods.
That's great. What's one simple thing you would recommend our listeners start with today to improve their health?
I would recommend that they go to the books or to the websites, dietcure.com or moodcure.com, and look at the questionnaires, which help you decide. It's all you really need are the questionnaires to identify what part of my brain is causing my problems, my cravings, my mood problems, my insomnia. And then get the books, identify which nutrients are going to repair the problems in that particular area of your brain. It's usually just one amino acid per area. There are 5 possible areas. Get some basic vitamin, mineral supplementation to assist the aminos in doing what they need to do, and proceed to repair your own brain. It can be done in a week. That's about what it takes to
Wow.
read the books, buy the supplements, and sit down and watch what they do for 10 minutes, one at a time.
Wow. So you said there's 5 areas. What are these 5 areas you're referring to?
I'm referring to 4 neurotransmitters that control all of our moods and our appetites. Serotonin, our natural antidepressant. Endorphin, our natural comforter, painkiller. The catecholamines, our natural energizers, our natural caffeine. And GABA, our natural tranquilizer. Plus blood sugar regulation in the brain, which is very sensitive. Those 5 things can each be corrected with a single amino acid.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's say we're moving now into the fall, and somebody knows that they typically get pretty depressed in the fall, and they start eating even more. They look on the questionnaire, they see, serotonin deficiency includes winter depression, increased appetite in winter, Do I have some of the other symptoms? Yeah, my sleep isn't very good. I tend to be kind of irritable and obsessive, worried, low self-confidence, negative. Yeah, I could use some help in that department.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear cut. That zone of your brain that produces serotonin is not able to produce adequate amounts to support, your sense of well-being in life. So it turns out there's just one amino acid available in any health food store, on or offline, that will feed that part of the brain instantly. And those negative deficiency symptoms, neurotransmitter deficiency symptoms, start to go away right away. So really, you just assess your own brain and play your brain like a piano. Mm-hmm. Okay, I need a little more of this. I'll take this amino acid. I need a little more tranquility. I'll take this. More energy. I'll take this. You can easily take them all at once, and the whole brain begins to light up and function as it should.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, I've applied a lot of your philosophies to my own lifestyle. I use the L-tyrosine for energy, and I used to drink a lot of caffeine, so it helps me kind of satiate my cravings for caffeine and keep my adrenals in check. So, yeah, I love the stuff you're doing, and I highly recommend that people definitely go and read your book. You said moodcure.com or dietcure.com?
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you today. Thanks for being on the podcast today, Julia. Do you have anything else you want to let the audience know?
No, I think I've done my best here.
Awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good. Bye-bye.
Bye. If you haven't already, get your custom workout program by downloading the Exerscribe app from the iTunes App Store today.